America's most chaotic advice line is ringing off the hook. Tonight, 101 moments where panic meets pantry, life hacks arm wrestle chemistry, and confidence loses to common sense. No lectures, just whiplash logic, panic poetry, and fixes that would scare a lab coat. Keep snacks away from the cleaning aisle, cap the cleaners, and guard your ego from the appliances. Let's begin. 1. A frantic parent calls because their child is glowing. Literally. The kid decided a glow stick looked like a tasty party snack and took a big bite. The operator had to calmly explain that while the taste is terrible, the child was not, in fact, about to undergo a radioactive transformation. 2. A woman called, concerned about her husband. He'd been complaining that the butter for his toast tasted waxy and a bit perfumey. Turns out, he was slathering his bread with her stick of secret deodorant. Poison Control had to inform him that powder fresh is not an artisanal flavor. 3. You know those little do-not-eat silica gel packets in new shoes? Someone ate one. He called Poison Control, fully expecting to hear he had minutes to live. The operator had to break the news that he wasn't poisoned, he just ate sand. Talk about an anticlimactic final meal. 4. An elderly man called after fixing his dentures with a mystery glue from the junk drawer. The good news, they finally stayed put. The bad news, so did his afternoon snack. The specialist suggested a dentist over DIY adhesives and a strict ban on craft supplies near the bathroom. 5. A backyard foraging chef phoned after seasoning dinner with unknown garden bulbs. He wanted to know if spicy tingling counted as flavor or warning label. He learned that plants with ominous names aren't a tasting flight and that grocery onions come with the underrated perk of not being toxic. 6. A fully grown adult called after mistaking a detergent pod for candy because the colors felt inviting. He expected a burst of fruit. He got a lecture on packaging and an urgent hydration plan. Final note from the operator. Snacks don't come with child-proof caps. 7. A new mother called in a complete panic because her baby swallowed some bathwater. She was worried about the soap and shampoo. The operator asked if the baby was breathing okay. The mom said yes. The operator replied, "Congratulations, your baby is just cleaner on the inside now." 8. A man called in after refilling his cat's litter box and accidentally inhaling a cloud of clean, unscented clay dust. He wasn't coughing. He was convinced his lungs were clumping. He asked if he should drink extra water so the dust could bind and scoop itself. The specialist explained lungs are not litter trays. Hydration is for people, not granules. And the only thing stuck was his imagination. He promised to pour slowly next time and stop Googling at 3 a.m. 9. A caller used clear nail glue to speed up contact lens insertion and discovered speed is not accuracy. One eye, one sealed lid, zero vision. The specialist walked her through safe rinsing and an immediate ER visit, plus a lifetime ban on doing optics in a dim bathroom. 10. A college kid, parched after a party, drank the murky water from a flower vase on the counter. He called, not worried about bacteria, but to ask if the earthy complex notes from the decaying rose stems meant the water was now considered a vintage artisanal beverage. 11. A man reached for eye drops in the dark and squeezed pet medication instead. He called because his eyes burned and his pride did too. Poison Control's guidance. Rinse, seek care, and label bottles like they're parachute cords, not party favors. 12. A woman called to ask if drinking her volumizing shampoo would give her thicker, fuller hair from the inside out. Poison Control had to confirm that no, her hair's body would not improve, but she could look forward to a very bubbly and fragrant trip to the bathroom. 13. A berry blast smoothie tasted like laundry day. He'd grabbed fabric softener with fruit pictures on the label and poured generously. The operator confirmed he'd achieved wrinkle-free insides, not a medical benefit, and recommended bottles with strawberries be stored far from the blender. 14. A woman called in a panic after using a powerful leaf blower to clear some dust bunnies from under her sofa. She was concerned she had accidentally created a microscopic dust storm that would give her family the plague. The operator had to gently explain that dust bunnies, while unsightly, do not carry medieval diseases, and her sofa was now just aggressively clean. 15. He chugged a glass from the counter, assuming apple juice. It was pine cleaner. When asked about the forest-forward aroma, he said he thought it was artisanal. He learned real ciders don't smell like mops and that tasting notes shouldn't include flooring. 16. To defeat roaches, a man misted the kitchen and himself with bug spray, then called to ask if he'd become pest-proof. He hadn't. He had, however, earned a shower, fresh air, and a house reset with actual ventilation, not superhero lore. 17. A pregnant caller craved chalk and wanted a nutrition breakdown like it was a snack bar. The specialist gently flagged pica, recommended medical follow-up, and suggested prenatal safe antacids instead of driveway decor. Sometimes the body asks for minerals. Sometimes it asks for common sense. 18. An elderly woman complained that her new medication was impossible to swallow. It tasted awful and had a weird, waxy texture. After a few questions, the operator realized the doctor had prescribed her a suppository. A long, awkward silence followed before the concept of an alternative delivery route was explained. 19. A houseguest mistook a colorful, round bath bomb for an artisanal confection and took a large bite. He called, not in pain, but to report that his mouth was fizzing like a science experiment and tasted of lavender and betrayal. He was mostly concerned this would affect his Yelp review of the stay. 20. Someone ate a fancy dessert covered in real edible gold leaf, then dialed in 15 minutes later hyperventilating about heavy metals coursing through my aura. He asked if he should set his phone to airplane mode so the gold wouldn't interfere with signals. He learned it's decoration, not an implant, and that the most toxic thing was the bill. He vowed to keep the receipt, not the panic. 21. A man covered himself in honey to lure all the ants at once for a cinematic showdown. Mid-crawl, he dialed to ask for a more epic plan. He got dish soap, shower instructions, and a reminder that pest control isn't a Marvel origin story. 22. An aspiring energy drink mogul mixed instant coffee with lawn products for rapid growth, then wisely called before sipping. He was told the only thing growing would be the emergency. He retired the brand name and switched to water plus a nap. 23. Terrified of a spider, he vacuumed it, then reversed the hose to launch it into space. He called after receiving a high-velocity mouthful of dusty garage history. The guidance: filters exist, aim away from your face, and space programs don't run on shop vacs. 24. A woman, feeling stressed, accidentally took her dog's anxiety medication. She called not because she was worried, but to report that it was working surprisingly well. She did, however, note an intense craving for belly rubs and an inexplicable urge to bark ferociously at the mailman. 25. Convinced it would give him the power of bioluminescence, a man ate a handful of fireflies he caught in his backyard. He called, deeply disappointed, to report that he was not in fact glowing. The operator had to explain that he wouldn't be lighting up any rooms, but he had successfully consumed a low-carb, high-protein insect meal. 26. A man ate a spoonful of his cat's gourmet pâté to prove to his friend that it was human grade. He wasn't calling about stomach pains. He wanted a professional opinion on whether ocean whitefish and tuna entree officially counted as surf and turf for the purposes of the bet. 27. A fisherman swallowed a hook during a chaotic snack break and asked if a door string trick would work. The operator said yes, to produce a new emergency. The only correct knot here was tying his shoes on the way to a surgeon. 28. For gravity-defying volume, a teen blasted his hair with laundry starch spray until his head looked like a museum exhibit. He called because the top layer had become weather-resistant and his comb made a sound like walking on snow. He was advised starch belongs on shirts, not scalps, and that showers beat solvents. He agreed to let humidity, not housekeeping products, handle styling. 29. A dorm dare led to a sip of lava lamp liquid to see the vibe. He reported burping in cursive and colors that smelled jazzy. The specialist had precisely 0 charts for that and one clear directive: ER now, retro home decor later. 30. Romantic dinner derailed when he freshened his breath with a tiny can that wasn't breath spray. After the world became extra spicy, he called from a sink, begging for neutralizers. He got flushing instructions, medical red flags to watch, and a new rule. Purse items get reading glasses first. 31. Those fancy, decorative soaps shaped like fruits and seashells? They're apparently a little too convincing. A house guest called, whispering, because he'd eaten 3 of them from the guest bathroom display and was now hiccuping lemon-scented bubbles. He was mostly worried about leaving a bad review. 32. For his son's crazy hair day at school, a dad ran out of hair gel and used a generous amount of crunchy peanut butter instead. He called in a panic an hour later because his son was being followed home from the bus stop by an aggressive flock of birds, 2 squirrels, and the neighbor's dog. 33. A teenager, inspired by a beauty hack, applied a generous amount of plumping lip gloss to his nostrils, hoping for a stronger, more defined nose. He called in a panic because his nose was now incredibly shiny, perpetually sticky, and tingling with the power of 1,000 tiny mints. 34. Mistaking industrial glue for lip balm, a caller discovered the world's worst sealant demo. Her speech was 90% muffled, 10% fury. She got safe removal steps, an urgent care referral, and a permanent ban on nightstand product roulette. 35. To a certain man, the water in the Christmas tree stand looked a lot closer than the kitchen sink. After drinking a full glass of pine needle and preservative-infused water, he called to ask if he'd absorb any of the tree's festive spirit, or if he'd just have to deal with the splinters. 36. Desperate for fresh breath before a date, a man chewed on one of those cardboard pine tree car air fresheners. He called to report that while his breath was indeed pine fresh, his tongue had gone numb, and he could no longer taste anything except the vague memory of a taxicab. 37. Trying to make healthier fried chicken, a man substituted regular cooking oil with a bottle of mineral oil because he heard it was purer. He called to report that the chicken was delicious, but he had spent the last hour in the bathroom experiencing what he could only describe as a high-speed digestive event. 38. A pet rock is supposed to be the easiest pet to care for, but one owner had to call after swallowing his during a magic trick gone wrong. He wasn't in pain, just wanted to know the geological timeline for passing a polished piece of granite and whether he should be concerned about erosion. 39. For a deep clean, a man scrubbed his teeth with a melamine sponge and called when his enamel felt too shiny to be legal. He learned that erasing stains can also erase protection, and that dentists prefer brushes, not drywall sorcery. 40. Chasing hidden bathroom nutrients. A caller sampled deodorant because the label mentioned minerals. The operator confirmed the only benefit was regret and suggested actual dietary sources over grooming products that proudly say external use. 41. After brushing with a trendy charcoal toothpaste, a man panicked when his tongue turned photonegative and wouldn't rinse clean. He called whispering that his mouth looked cursed. He was told the pigment clings, not haunts, and time plus normal toothpaste beats exorcisms. He agreed to stop filming a black tongue horror short in his bathroom and switch to something less theatrical before meetings. 42. Will my poop sparkle? That was the only question a caller had after eating an entire tube of craft glitter to feel fabulous on the inside. The operator clinically informed him that his entire GI tract was now a biohazard rave. And no, that did not make him fabulous, just a public health risk with flair. 43. In DIY physical therapy mode, a man spritzed a squeaky knee with lubricant, then taste tested the drips to work from the inside. He called about minty metal aftertaste. He got a firm no, a liver PSA, and a referral to a clinician with real tools. 44. A wellness blogger swallowed 3 edible glitter capsules and immediately worried he'd installed micro mirrors in his gut. He called to ask if disco balls reflect X-rays. He learned the product is for cupcakes, not CT scans, and the only thing shining would be his next trip to the restroom. He promised to keep sparkle on frosting and leave radiology to hospitals, not hashtags. 45. For a magnetic face challenge, a man arranged fridge letters across his cheeks until they spelled his name, then called terrified he'd absorbed magnetic vibes. He wanted to know if cutlery might orbit. He learned static and oil are clingy, not cosmic, and dishwashers erase alphabet soup faster than biology. He promised to stick to word games that don't involve actual sticking. 46. After a long day at the county fair, a man quenched his thirst by drinking the murky water from the hot dog bobbing tank. He called to complain about the greasy aftertaste. He was gently informed he'd just consumed the boiled essence of 1,000 hot dogs, 50 sweaty children, and pure, unfiltered regret. 47. A chipped tooth met quickset cement. Minutes later, a numb tongue and a very worried caller. He asked if the repair was construction grade. It was, unfortunately. The operator advised immediate dental care and retiring the toolbox from oral health care forever. 48. For that perfect wet hair look, a guy used a can of high-gloss tire shine. He called because the fumes were making him dizzy and his hair had the rigidity of a helmet. He was told his hair now had excellent treadwear and would repel water, but to avoid open flames if he wanted to keep his head. 49. A man called to complain about the taste of his new all-natural moisturizer. After some questioning, it was revealed he was eating a large tub of bag balm, an ointment for cow udders. He argued that if it was good for a cow's sensitive skin, it should be a gourmet health food. The operator advised him that his stomach was not, in fact, a dairy cow. 50. A parent called because a toddler chewed a fat, non-toxic crayon during craft time and now had a masterpiece where a tongue should be. The worry wasn't choking. It was, will he be mint-flavored forever? They got a quick primer on crayons versus candy, what to watch for, and why art supplies belong on paper. The kid got water, the table got wipes, and the crayon got retired. 51. A choir singer worked through an entire bag of extra strong menthol lozenges during rehearsal and called when his mouth felt like winter and his high notes sounded refrigerated. He wanted to know if he'd iced his vocal cords. He learned menthol numbs, not tunes, and rest beats more mints. He promised to leave Arctic areas to nature documentaries. 52. To get rid of a deep scratch, a man meticulously polished his tablet screen with his girlfriend's expensive microdermabrasion face scrub. He called Poison Control to ask if the device would now have healthier pixels and a youthful glow, as it was no longer turning on. 53. A call came in from someone who drank an entire bottle of blue food coloring on a dare. They weren't in any pain. The emergency was purely aesthetic. Their frantic question was how long they could expect every single one of their bodily fluids to look like they'd just murdered a Smurf. 54. An office worker popped one of those little air pillows in a package right next to his face and inhaled a startled gasp of perfectly regular air. He called to report factory oxygen in his lungs. He learned the pillows contain air. Just air. He agreed to relocate the unboxing show away from his nose and to let scissors, not suspense, do the popping. 55. Anxious chewer plus plugged-in lamp cord equaled a call about absorbing electricity and whether he could now charge a phone by holding it. He learned tingles aren't batteries, shocks need evaluation, and mouth meets plastic is a habit to retire today. 56. To fast charge a new phone, he tried a kitchen appliance that rhymes with bike rove. The smoke turned neon, the panic went plaid, and he dialed. He got ventilation steps, a no-questions-asked device funeral, and a solemn vow to let chargers charge. 57. A man, convinced he could measure his stress levels, put a blood pressure cuff around his own head and inflated it. He called not because he was in pain, but to complain that the device was giving an error message. He was calmly told the machine wasn't designed to measure the immense pressure of his own stupidity. 58. After seeing farm gear online, a curious caller swallowed a heavy cow magnet to attract loose change. He phoned when keys stuck to his shirt, psychologically. He got imaging advice, hospital directions, and a lifetime ban on agricultural experiments inside the human body. 59. A parent mixed vinegar and baking soda for a school volcano and then phoned in to ask whether the science gas floating over the kitchen was secretly dangerous. They were told that dramatic fizz isn't dystopia, just clean up with a towel, and that goggles are for splashes, not apocalypses. The volcano erupted again, outside, where carpets don't live. 60. For that healthy inner glow, one genius decided to drink a small amount of his girlfriend's spray tan solution. He called not in distress, but to ask if he needed to rotate for an even tan. He was informed that his internal organs now had a lovely bronze sheen, but his next doctor's visit would require sunglasses. 61. A man trying to quit smoking took up chewing on ink pens. He called after accidentally swallowing the entire ink cartridge from a ballpoint pen. He wanted to know if this meant his thoughts would now be written in blue, or if he'd just have to deal with a very colorful trip to the bathroom. 62. A homeowner, curious if his new electric dog fence was working, decided to test it by holding the collar and making a run for the street. He called after the jolt sent him into his neighbor's prize-winning roses. His complaint? The shock had given him a sudden, deep understanding of his dog's existential dread. 63. A barista-level caffeine binge backfired, 4 double espressos before lunch. The caller's hands were writing in cursive without permission. He wanted to know if he'd permanently upgraded his frame rate. He learned pacing beats, panic, water helps, and breathing isn't a firmware patch. He promised to stop measuring productivity in shots and to treat sleep as a feature, not a bug. 64. For a rave, a man painted his teeth with glow-in-the-dark paint, hoping for a killer smile. He called when his mouth wouldn't stop glowing, even with his lips closed. The operator advised that his next dental checkup would likely require a Geiger counter instead of that little mirror on a stick. 65. A call came in not from a person who was poisoned, but from someone whose entire house was. Their Roomba had run over a pile of dog poop and then completed its 2-hour cleaning cycle. The operator had to create a new category of exposure on the spot: full home fecal aerosolization. 66. Convinced he could absorb the information through osmosis, a man ate a vintage cassette tape of a Learn Spanish program. He called to report that he wasn't fluent in Spanish yet, but he was experiencing a constant low-quality hissing sound in his stomach. 67. One caller mistook his cat's malt-flavored hairball remedy for a tube of gourmet caramel. He called after eating the entire thing. The operator had to explain that the product was essentially a high-powered lubricant. He was advised to cancel all plans, as his digestive system was now operating with 0 friction. 68. After running out of toothpaste, a man used a tube of clear bathroom caulk, figuring it was all about sealing out germs. He called, his words muffled, because he had successfully waterproofed his entire mouth against flavor, moisture, and joy. He was now a perfectly sealed, non-biodegradable human. 69. For moody selfies, a man stared into a ring of ultra-bright LED fairy lights until his eyes printed little halos on everything. He called asking whether blinking resets the screen. He learned retinas aren't monitors, and rest in the dark isn't a software command, it's advice. He promised his next photo shoot would involve lamps pointed at walls, not eyeballs. 70. A party-goer took one heroic inhale from a helium balloon for a squeaky toast, then called worried his voice might be stuck on chipmunk. He wanted to know if gravity helps it drop faster. He learned fresh air restores normal, comedy's temporary, and tanks belong to pros. He retired the bit and let his lungs return to their original pitch. 71. A fitness bro ate an entire bag of sugar-free gummy bears during a movie and called from the parking lot describing his stomach as disco in a dryer. He asked if the sweetener required a counterspell. He learned labels aren't poetry, dosage matters, and chairs beat car seats for waiting things out. He promised to pace his snacks like reps. 72. At a crowded public gym, a bodybuilder decided to use high-performance motor oil for a superior muscle sheen. He called from the parking lot after the entire building was evacuated. His complaint? The fire department had ruined his pump, and he wanted to know if the oil was at least good for his skin. 73. A man, enticed by a candle named Warm Vanilla Sugar, decided to take a small bite. He wasn't calling because he felt sick. He was calling to ask if Poison Control had a customer service number for the candle company, as he wanted to file a formal complaint about false advertising and a waxy, unsatisfying aftertaste. 74. In a desperate attempt to create a smart home, a man tried to connect his old toaster to the internet by jamming an Ethernet cable into the bread slot and plugging it in. He called poison control about the noxious blue fumes, wanting to know if he'd successfully downloaded the internet or just poisoned his entire family. 75. A man trying to clean his ears accidentally used a tube of super glue instead of eardrops. He called, not in immediate pain, but to ask if his ear was now permanently waterproofed and if this would improve his swimming performance. The answer was a resounding and urgent no. 76. A smoothie fanatic dumped 2 tablespoons of blue spirulina into a shake and called when his mouth looked like a Smurf audition and his sink wouldn't stop winking turquoise. He asked if he'd dyed his insides. He learned pigments pass through, not renovate. He promised to have the scoop and stop scaring mirrors before work. 77. A woman, determined to have the whitest teeth, used a scrubbing bubbles toilet cleaning wand as a toothbrush. She called, not in pain, but to complain that it didn't foam up and smile like in the commercial, and was, in her opinion, a case of false advertising. 78. To get into the holiday spirit, a man ate a handful of fake snow from a can. He called poison control when he started burping tiny styrofoam-like flakes. He was told he would definitely have a white Christmas, but it would be taking place entirely within his lower intestine. 79. After running out of Vicks VapoRub, an elderly man used his wife's potent hemorrhoid cream for his chest congestion. He called to report that while his sinuses were still clogged, the entire right side of his torso was calm, soothed, and profoundly numb. 80. A family made slime with food coloring, forgot the gloves, and then rang to report Smurf palms at breakfast. They worried the dye was absorbing their souls. They got advice about soap, patience, and shirts they don't love. The only lasting effect was a new rule. Science projects may not share counter space with pancakes. 81. A man tried to use his new drone to deliver a beer from the fridge. It malfunctioned and instead delivered a full-force airmail of his wife's most expensive perfume, shattering the bottle and spraying the liquid directly into his open mouth. He called complaining that everything he ate now tasted like a department store in Paris. 82. A home spa experiment steeped feet in ultra-strong black tea for antioxidants, then triggered a call when ankles emerged sepia-toned like antique photos. They asked whether they'd tanned from the shins down. They learned tannins stain, not heal, and lotion outperforms lattes. They promised to drink tea and let their feet stay in the present. 83. A man, trying to fix his TV remote, licked a 9-volt battery to see if it was still working. It was. He called after the jolt made him bite his own tongue, asking if he had accidentally recharged himself. He was advised that humans run on calories, not volts, and that his tongue was not a reliable power meter. 84. After watching a spy movie, a teenager tried to make invisible ink by mixing lemon juice and a whole bottle of Windex. He drank some to test it, hoping he'd turn invisible. He called to report that while he was still very visible, his burps now left windows streak-free. 85. A health fanatic ate a spoonful of mineral sunscreen because the label promised zinc oxide protection. He called to ask what the recommended daily allowance of beach-scented paste was for optimal cellular defense. He was advised that an internal SPF was not, in fact, a thing. 86. Trying temporary dental wax, a man swallowed a pea-sized piece and called to ask if he'd accidentally, eco-friendly composted himself. He learned the product is made to be boring on purpose and the biggest risk was reinventing anxiety. He booked a dentist for the actual problem and promised to stop narrating his mouth like a nature documentary. 87. To cure his bad breath, a man gargled with a capful of fresh linen, scented air freshener, believing it would eliminate odors at the source. He called poison control not because he was sick, but to file a complaint that the product did not, in fact, make his breath smell like clean laundry and he wanted his money back. 88. Convinced he could acquire feline night vision, a man ate an entire bowl of his cat's premium tuna and salmon feast. He called, not in pain, but deeply disappointed that it hadn't worked. He was still bumping into furniture in the dark, but now had an overwhelming urge to nap in a sunbeam. 89. At her son's wedding, a woman ate a handful of what she thought were fancy European pearls off the wedding cake. They were decorative, non-edible plastic beads. She called from the reception bathroom, whispering in a panic, not about poison, but about how to explain the gaping holes in the $5,000 cake. 90. While cleaning jewelry in an ultrasonic bath on the kitchen counter, a caller worried the tiny mist above the unit had drifted into his soup and turned lunch into liquid gemstones. He learned distance and lids are friends, soup is not a sponge, and lunch remains lunch. He moved the gadget, ate the soup, and demoted the panic. 91. In a moment of pure genius, a teenager tried to create a jet-powered skateboard using a model rocket engine. He called after the subsequent explosion launched the skateboard through his garage door. He wasn't concerned about the damage, but the high-pitched ringing in his ears was really messing with his vibe. 92. While making donuts, a man ran out of powdered sugar and used what he thought was a similar white powder from his pantry, drywall spackle. He called to complain that his donuts were unpleasantly gritty and had a chalky finish. He had successfully created the world's first construction-grade pastry. 93. A concerned mother called from the public library. Her toddler, a voracious reader, had been licking the pages of very old books. She was worried about him contracting ancient diseases. The operator reassured her that the plague was unlikely, but he may have just absorbed more knowledge than the entire school system could provide. 94. A woman, seeking a DIY beauty treatment to seal her pores, applied a thin layer of clear silicone bathroom caulk as a face mask. She called, her words muffled, when it cured into a waterproof, rubbery second skin. The operator informed her that while her face was now mildew-resistant, her social life was not. 95. A new fish owner dropped an oxygen tablet into a bowl and splashed a dot of fizzing water onto his lip, then called reporting minty tingle, where no mint lived. He learned the additive is for finned roommates, not cocktails, and a rinse beats prophecy. He promised chemistry time would happen far from faces and snacks. 96. At a club, a fog machine burped out a dramatic puff right as someone exhaled, and they called to ask if party clouds are edible. They were told theatrical fog is not a smoothie, ventilation is a thing, and moderation applies to atmospheres too. They promised to dance farther from the dragon next time and let the air settle before conclusions. 97. A man, grabbing a tube in the dark, brushed his teeth vigorously with his wife's extra-strength hair removal cream. He called, not because of the chemical burns, but to complain his mouth felt alarmingly smooth, and his sense of taste had been peacefully depilated. 98. A health enthusiast, trying a new detox trend, broke open a Brita water filter and swallowed a spoonful of the activated charcoal granules. He called to ask about the health benefits. The operator confirmed his stomach was now aggressively filtered, but only for things it was never meant to process in the first place. 99. A DIY aromatherapy fan slathered undiluted pure essential oil on a forearm and called when the patch turned the color of opinions. He asked if burning meant it was working deeply. He learned skin likes math, not bravado, and carrier oils carry for a reason. He promised to respect ratios and save intensity for the gym. 100. For a science fair project, a student tried to create a potato battery, powerful enough to charge his phone. He misunderstood the instructions and used 2 jumper cables connected to a car battery instead. He called after the potato exploded, redecorating his kitchen in a style best described as electrical fire chic. 101. And finally, a man called in, not panicked, just out of breath. He was trying to win a bet by inflating a car tire using only his own lung power. He was calling to ask if there was a special technique he was missing. After a long, stunned silence, the operator had to inform him that the only thing he was successfully inflating was his own ego, and both were about to pop spectacularly. You heard the highlights of human chaos. Your turn. What's the dumbest health tip or household myth you've seen someone actually try? Drop the exact line they said. Roast it. Name it. I'm reading every reply. If this twisted tour entertained you, Tap like and subscribe before someone nearby drinks the air freshener.